In the delivery room, my mother whispered, "Another mouth to feed." My sister laughed. "Maybe this one won't end up as useless as you." I tried not to cry. Then the nurse slipped me a note that said, "Your baby was born with something they didn't expect. Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tailies, where loyalty dies, lies bleed out, and the truth hits like a slap to the face. These aren't just stories. They're confessions soaked in betrayal and regret. Ever spotted a red flag when it was already too late? Say it in the comments. Let's tear into today's tale. I'm Ava. I grew up in Binghamton, New York. It's not the kind of town you brag about. The best thing people say is that it's 2 hours from Syracuse and 4 from New York City. I used to think small towns were supposed to come with a built-in safety net of neighbors and family, but all mine ever gave me was rot. I lived most of my teenage years dreaming of escape. My mom, I bet, was the bitter kind of woman who made being a single parent her entire personality. She never let you forget what she gave up. Especially she never actually gave it up. She drank boxed wine in the kitchen like it was a sacrament and smoked while watching soap operas in her robe. Tessa, my older sister by 3 years, stayed glued to her side like a cigarette butt. She never grew out of the house, the town, or the bullying phase she began when I was 7. Tessa's always been pretty, sharp-tongued, the kind of person people pay attention to until they really get to know her. Then they leave. She never left Binghamton though. She nested in it. Meanwhile, I tried to fly. I went to SUNY Cortland, not exactly Ivy League, but far enough away. I worked retail, waited tables, and eventually took a dead-end office job in Ithaca. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, until I met Cole. He was charming, a customer turned date, a date turned boyfriend, boyfriend turned oops, I'm pregnant bear. I even had time to catch my breath when I told him. He paused, smiled, said he needed to think, and then he blocked my number. That was month 2. Month 3, I lost my job. Downsizing, they said. I couldn't make rent. So, ashamed and pregnant, I came crawling back to the place I swore I'd never return to. I remember walking up the path to that peeling front door. Tessa opened it, looked at my stomach, and just raised one eyebrow. Jesus, you too? Mom didn't even get up from the recliner. Well, she muttered, I guess we're feeding another one now. Living back there was like being 14 again, except this time I was bloated, tired, and couldn't even drink to take the edge off. Tessa made jabs like clockwork. You still waddle like a duck, she'd say. Brushing past me in the hallway, Mom only spoke to criticize how I made tea wrong, how I took up too much room, how I should have figured something out instead of coming home. I worked at a local CV store, afford prenatal vitamins and the cheapest groceries I could find. Every evening I'd walk past the parks and pretend I lived somewhere else. I talked to my baby like he was already my friend. Sometimes I'd sit by the river and wonder if he'd resent me one day for bringing him into this. When my water broke at 3:12 a.m., I didn't wake anyone. I called a ride-share and grabbed the bag I packed weeks ago. In the back seat of that old Camry. I clenched my fists and breathed through the pain. The driver didn't say a word, just stared straight ahead. The hospital was fluorescent, freezing, and oddly quiet. A nurse named Noelle took one look at me and offered the first kindness I'd received in months. She helped me to a room and checked me in with a gentle tone that almost made me cry right there. Hours passed, then they arrived. I hadn't told them I was in labor, but somehow Tessa showed up with Mom in tow. They walked in mid-contraction just as I was screaming into the pillow. Another mouth to feed, my mother muttered, sitting at the foot of the bed like a critic at a play. Tessa snorted. Maybe this one will end up as useless as you. The nurse caught my eye. Her jaw tightened. I turned my face to the wall and tried not to cry. It took 3 more hours. But eventually he arrived. My son, warm, heavy, screening mine. I named him Milo. They took him for routine checks almost immediately. As the pediatrician wheeled him out, Noelle returned with a piece of paper folded in her hand. She leaned in, handed it to me discreetly, and walked out. The note said, "Your baby was born with something they didn't expect. Don't worry. He's healthy and he's special. They wouldn't explain it right, so I'm telling you this now." My pulse roared in my ears. I pressed the nurse button, but Noelle was already gone. 10 minutes later, a pediatric specialist came on and explained that Milo had a rare condition, polyactyl. An extra finger on each hand. No danger, no concern, cosmetic. Some parents chose surgery, others didn't. They asked what I wanted. I looked at his tiny fists, 12 fingers total, clenched like he already knew this world would be hard. I said nothing. Yet, when we got home, the insult shifted. Mom called him sideshow, and she thought I wasn't listening. Tessa joked about monkey paws. I didn't respond. I logged everything in a journal, word for word. Date, time, context. Every insult, every small act of cruelty. Even if it seemed petty, I wasn't sure why yet, but I knew it mattered. I started posting anonymously on parenting forums. One mom reached out. Someone from California. She also had a son with polyacty. She said her son was 6 and brilliant, already building robots from old junk. She sent pictures. I cried when I saw his hands. They looked like Milo's. That's when something in me hardened. I wouldn't raise Milo there. I wouldn't let him think he was a freak or a burden. So I began planning. Not loudly. Quietly. Strategically. I applied for a work-from-home position at a children's bookstore in Ikende, Ithaca that sold personalized books. I attached samples of my writing. I waited. 2 weeks later, I got an interview. I wore lipstick for the first time in months. I did the call from the public library with Milo and his carrier beside me. I got the job. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I saved every cent. I lied and said I was taking Milo for walks. But I was going to the library to print documents. I created a PayPal. Then a GoFundMe under a fake name. People donated. Strangers cared more than my family ever had. I kept pretending at home, smiling thinly, cooking for them, watching their shows. They didn't suspect anything, not even when I took a picture of Tessa's boyfriend kissing someone else in the alley behind the crooked pint and sent it to her from an anonymous number. Not even when I quietly got our house investigated for mold throw. The county health department after Milo started coughing. Not even when I recorded my mother screaming about how she should have aborted both of yous and emailed it to the manager of the day Koresh applied to work at. She didn't get the job. None of it felt like enough, but it was a start. I was patient. That was the key. When you're raised in a house where love is weaponized and silence is survival, you learn how to wait. You learn to make your moves in the dark while pretending to flinch in the light. They thought I was still broken. Still useless. Still the little sister. The failure. The charity case that could beat down with a glare or a sigh. I let them believe it. Milo was growing fast, wide-eyed, curious, always moving his hands in the air like he was conducting invisible orchestras. His fingers were nimble. Beautiful. I couldn't imagine them any other way. Had no plans to fix him. He wasn't broken. My work at the bookstore was going well. I'd started writing product descriptions, then small newsletter blurbs, then custom stories. The owner, Dana, was kind, soft-spoken, early 50s. Based in Ithaca but originally from Brooklyn, she reminded me of what women could be: firm, kind, intelligent, unapologetic. We'd talk sometimes after hours. One night, I told her about Milo vaguely. About the condition. Not the family. Her response was simple: difference doesn't mean defect. It hit me harder than it should have. I began saving more aggressively. I opened a new checking account in a different bank using my work's address for statements. Paid in cash at home pretending I was barely scraping by. Even let Tessa guilt me into buying groceries. A few times made a show of tossing my reusable bags onto the floor when I got home. What's this? Organic? You think you're better than us now? I smiled. No, just wanted something better for Milo. That name still soured their mouths around the time Milo turned one eye. Started researching housing assistance in Tompkins County low-income program child care subsidy sliding scale clinici. Mapped it out like a military OP, even contacted a local social worker. Anonymous told her I was considering moving counties and needed resource. Sent me a PDF. I saved it, printed it at the librarian, hid it in a box of old diapers. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's paperwork and planning. And then came the birthday. Milo's first birthday. I hadn't planned a party, knew better, but I made a small cake the night before and set it on the table with a single candle. Cleaned him up it. Him and a new onesie I'd bought from a thrift store that said strong like mom. And lit the candle just as I was about to sing. Tessa stomped into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Where's the rest of it? She asked. The rest of what? The cake. You're not expecting us to eat that tiny thing, are you? I glanced at Milo. He was reaching for the flickering flame. His smile wide and toothy. I made it for him. It's his birthday. Tessa rolled her eyes, right? The 12-fingered wonder. I froze something inside me, snap it but not in a screaming, plate-throwing kind of way. In a still, cold, quiet way, he picked up the cake, blew out the candle, held Milo close, and walked back to our room that night. I made a decision wasn't going to wait anymore. Within 2 weeks, I filed a rental application for a studio in downtown Ethicasmal. Yes, but Cliano cigarettes Makino Milduno. Screaming property manager was a kind woman named Gretawa had a toddler of her own. She approved my application after one. Zoom calendar soft laugh when Milo crawled into frame and started waving, telling he's hired. She said he gave my 2 weeks notice at Kivesware. I still worked part-time for the health benefits. He told them I was relocating manager. Shane said, took you long enough. He'd seen the bruises verbal and otherwise. I can't really hide that kind of worry. Didn't tell. My Mothri didn't tell Tessa. Instead, I started packing late at night. Tome box at a time hidden in garbage. Bags beneath my Betty labeled nothing, just quietly moved things out to the shed behind the house, staging them for a single trip. When the day came, Milo was my shadowhead, sit beside me stacking plastic cups, babbling to himself. His hands worked fast, coordinated better than many an afternoon. Tessa came home earlier than expected and caught me folding his clothes into a suitcase. What's this? I didn't look up. Laundry. She walked over and pulled out one of his tiny shirts. Are you leaving? Someday, she laughed. Sure you are, but she looked unset. Late a few nights later, I slipped another letter into an envelope and mailed it from the post office across town. It was addressed to the Bing Paint and Housing Authority, and I detailed the condition of our family home. Mold, non-functioning plumbing, child endangerment, verbal abuse, included Fatosi, didn't sign, ID didn't need tethered. Investigate, maybe find her, maybe do nothing, but it would be one more thorn in her side. A reminder that not everyone stays quiet forever. A week before move out, Danny mother found the envelope from my new landlord. She stormed into my room waving it like a smoking gun. What the hell is this? My lease. She stared at me, eyes sharp, mouth twitching. You can't just leave. Watch me. Tessa was behind her, no arms crossed, smirking. You're not going to make it. Avayu can't even afford diapers without. You say don't buy diapers, you're a mess of damn charity case with a mutant kid and delusions. My heart pounded, but I was calmly picked up Maloho. It started to cry from the yelling and looked her in the eye. You can't hurt me anymore. You already died and I survived it. My mother scoffed, ungrateful. I turned my back on her and shut the door. It was the last time I'd ever live in that house. The day I left, I did it at 6 o'clock and I paid a guy named Manny I met at the hardware store to help load his truck with my box sesh. Didn't ask questions, just took the cash nutted end. Worked fast. Milo was strapped in the back seat in a borrowed car seat, thumbing to himself. Noelle, the nurse, had sent me a card a few weeks before she transferred. Hospitalspit remembered us. Card read, I always knew you'd get out. Some of us are just born with more fingers, others with more courage. I tucked it into the glove box next to the photo of Milo holding a spoon with his extra fingers. As we pulled away from that house, I didn't look back. The road out of Bing Painton was cracked and familiar. The sun wasn't up yet and mist rolled across the hills like it was trying to blanket the town in forgetfulness. He rolled the windows down a little, letting the air in. Cool and damp. Milo was asleep before we hit I-81. I looked in the rearview mirror at his tiny face, so peaceful and unaware of what we were leaving behind. Didn't know that we were fleeing a legacy of bitterness, off scorn, disguised as tough love, of generational growth. Didn't know that his first year was spent among people. Woe didn't smile at him once, but I knew it. I would never let it touch him again. The move into the Ithaca studio went smoothly. Greta, the landlord, helped carry boxes up the single flight of stairs and even brought a stuffed bear. For Milo, you'll like it here, she said. This building's full of people starting over. Our unit was small, just one room with a kitchenette and a narrow balcony, but it was clean and quiet. No sour wine breath in the hallway, no walls thin with contempty. Bought secondhand furniture and it carefully. Every corner was chosen with Milo and Mindy. Turned a closet into a makeshift nursery, straying up fairy lights. I'd found at a dollar store. He liked to look at them at night, giggling and waving his hands at the glow during the day. I work at the children's bookstore, had expanded my horsey, was now handling customer communications and writing personalized storybooks. Parents would send in Namas Favore animals, imaginary best friends, and I'd turn them into tales with castle sense, Maritson, magical for times. I'd write extrasbinus ending set adventure assist for Milot night. When he was asleep, I put in it just how to survive, but how to rebuild, how to thrive, and how to make sure me mother and Tessa would one day choke on the bitterness they tried to force feed me. It started with a simple online post, a thread on a popular community forum called Upstatish * Storm, a place where locals shared gossip, animus, tips, and neighborhood dirty. Made a new account, posted under the name Rini1975. Anyone Else noticed a certain daycare applicant in Binghamton got denied after a recording of her went around. Wonder what else she's hiding? The comments lit upon person posted, I know her. Yvette, right? She's toxic. Another, her daughter worked with me once, said she called her own grandson a freak. I didn't respond, he didn't need taught that post got shared screenshot. Whispered about in digital corners of the town be the next week me. Mom's church group had stopped inviting her to Sunday brunch, called me 6 times in a row, he didn't answer then. I emailed screenshots of Tessa's boyfriend's social media pictures of him with a new woman asterisk to Tessa's burner account he knew she used. It once logged in on my laptop years ago and forgot to delete the cookie. He sent the photos with no context. She messaged me the next day. You did this. He left because of you. I didn't reply, archive the message even spay, not for the courts, but for myself. He kept every message. They sent every voicemail with their voices cracked with rage or desperation. It felt good. Not joyful. Not gleeful. Just like balance was starting to return. Ithaca slowly became home. Milo joined a parent-to-me class at the community center on Meadow Street. I met other mothers. One of them, Lila, invited us for weekend walks at Stoyert Park. She had twins and an ex-husband who fled to Oregon when the boys turned 2. We're all rebuilding something, she said once. The trick is not pretending we're not. Milo thrived. He was walking now, stumbling, falling, laughing. I bought a secondhand camcorder and filmed everything. His first steps across the rug. His attempts to say truck came out sounding more like duck. His little hands, all 12 fingers, gripping blocks and crayons like tools of the trade. I started writing a news story at night, not for the bookstore, not for clients, for me. A memoir maybe, or something close to it, about a girl with a mother who clipped her wings, and a son who taught her how to fly again. I wasn't sure if I'd ever publish it, but it felt like a kind of release. Then. One Saturday afternoon, while Milo napped and the rain pattered against the windows, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was my mother's voice. She sounded tired. Smaller than I remembered. Ava, please. Tessa's gone. She left town. Took everything. I don't know what I did wrong. Can't pay the rent without her. I can't do this alone. Just call me back. Didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally did. That night, I wrote a letter, not to her, to myself. Just to mark the day. Today is the day. I became whole, not because I hurt them, but because I stopped letting them hurt me. But the revenge wasn't over. Not yet. There was still one more thing. I'd planned one last nail in the rotting wood of our history. I'd started working with a local writers collective. One of the women there, a retired social worker named Arlene, read one of my story drafts and said, "You've got something to say. Have you ever thought of writing a piece for the Finger Lakes Review?" They publish memoirs. I hadn't, but I did now doubt, so I pulled up my journal, the one I'd started during pregnancy. All the insults. The hospital whispers. The note from Noel. The remarks about Milo. They laughed when I told them I was applying for jobs. The birthday insult. I wrote it all, changed the names. Of course, but anyone from Binghamton who read it would know I didn't write it for fame. I wrote it for the truth, for the women still trapped in rooms they were told were homes, for the daughters told they were burdens. Asterisk for the mothers who chose love over legacy. I hit send, and then I waited. The article was published 2 weeks later. Born Unwanted, What It Means to Become a Mother After Surviving One. That was the title. I never asked them to change it. It was bold. Honest. And just vague enough. But if you knew the people I was writing about, you wouldn't need to squint to see the truth. It made the front page of the Finger Lakes Review Sunday edition. I didn't expect it to go beyond local circles. I thought it would maybe get passed around by the writer. Group shared once or twice on Facebook. I underestimated the power of truth. By Monday, it had been picked up by a regional blog, then a national parenting page, then a podcast. Anonymous author exposes the quiet violence of family. They asked if I do interviews. I declined. Let the story speak for itself. People reached out to me through the bookstore's contact form. Mothers, daughters, sons, foster parents. People who had been downed, discarded, minimized. Some messages were just one sentence. I thought I was the only one. But not everyone was impressed. That same week, Tessa messaged me from a new number. "Did you seriously write that trash about us? Everyone knows it's about Mom and me. Hope your dumb little story was worth burning your bridges." And then a second message. Mom's been crying, not that you care. She's embarrassed. People at church are talking. I read both messages while Milo sat in his booster seat, dipping his fingers into yogurt and drawing squiggles on his tray. I smiled, because it worked. I never needed them to fall apart. I just needed the world to finally see them for what they were, and for me to finally stop seeing them as something I owed loyalty to. But revenge, real revenge, the kind that lasts isn't about destruction, it's about disconnection, it's about building something so solid and bright for yourself that their words, their bitterness, can't reach a and then it's about making sure they have to watch by spring. I've moved to a 2-bedroom on the edge of Keuka Lake. Sunlight poured in every morning. Milo had a real crib, bookshelf, and a little table with paint jars that stained his fingers daily. I got invited to speak at a small community college's writing workshop. I brought Milo with me. I read excerpts from the story, answered questions, told them what it meant to give yourself permission to walk away. Noelle, yes, the nurse, emailed me after she saw the story online. She said she cried when she read the part about the note. You deserved better. I'm so glad you gave that to yourself. I printed it and taped it to the inside of my new kitchen cabinet, where I keep the cereal. Every morning I see her words while grabbing the Cheerios. Then one day, about a year after, I left Binghamton. A letter arrived, not a text, not an email, an actual handwritten letter, it was from my mother, Ava. I don't know what you want me to say. I read the article. Everyone did. You made me sound like a monster. Maybe I was. I don't know if it's too late, but I want you to know I'm sorry, not just for what I said in the hospital, but for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do hope you and Milo are happy. Mom, I sat on the porch for a long time, reading that letter again and again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't sweeping. It was scribbled and uncertain. Handwriting, the kind you use when you're afraid to get it wrong. I didn't cry. I also didn't throw it away. Instead, I folded it and tucked it next to Noelle's note in the cabinet. Not because I wanted to remember her, but because I wanted to remember what survival looked like from all angles. Forgiveness, maybe one day, but reconciliation? No, my revenge wasn't to get them to love me, it was to prove I never needed them to begin with, and that was enough.